Hello, and thank you for listening to Liberty and Gun Rights Podcast. Please subscribe and follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, and take the time to leave a review. Our Instagram channel is instagram.com Liberty Gun Rights. Video episodes are uploaded to rumble.com and my YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel and Rumble is called James Moffett. You can just search for it. Please subscribe and follow these channels for future updates. I release episodes every Friday at 8 a.m. Thank you for listening, and now to our featured episode. Hello and welcome to Liberty and Gun Rights Podcast. My name is James Moffett. Today we have Erik Holt online as our guest speaker. How you doing, Erik?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Hey, do me a favor and introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Erik Holt. I'm a career fireman. Started as a teenager, worked my way up through fire chief, and now I work as a full-time emergency manager, running emergency services for a county. I'm here to share my story. I've been going through a First Amendment battle in the courts for the last 2 years, and I finally got sick of waiting, and I decided I'm going to share that story. So I'm just an ordinary guy, veteran, father, first responder, and I'm here to talk about it.
Awesome. So before we hit record, you said you were in the U.S. Army?
Yeah.
What did you do there?
Fireman.
Fireman. Okay. You said the fire chief of your small town or whatever ran into you when you were 16 and asked you if you'd like to get involved in that?
Yeah, that's how the journey began, for sure.
Awesome. All right, so since you're here to talk about your First Amendment journey and all of that, you can kind of talk to the listening audience and tell them about what's going on.
Yeah, okay. So, back in 2022, I was a fire chief out in Colorado, and the board of directors elections happened. You know, it's small town stuff. Our district was 66 square miles and about 5,500 residents. But, you know, the board of directors for a tax district goes through an election process. I was the fire chief for that, and it was a very contentious election but amongst the board that was seated that I had worked with and kind of built a department with. And then, you know, the folks that said they could do it better, and, you know, they were facing off. So I didn't get too much involved with that. My job was to run a fire department and lead firefighters and make sure that people were getting the help they needed. So that was my focus. But the election happened May 2nd, 2023, and I got a couple complaints. So I actually had to respond. There was a gentleman that had a cardiac arrest call, and unfortunately he didn't make it. But we had to use the medevac location there at the fire station where the election was being held. So I was there present for that, and I received a complaint by a citizen that there was some wonky stuff going on with the election. I eventually, you know, chewed on that, and I went and we had a third-party vendor that operated a security system for the fire station. So I went and retrieved that off-duty, that footage from them, and I reviewed it. And what I saw was pretty alarming. Kind of a scheme played out on how to cheat the election. So I contacted the district attorney's office and turned that evidence over, becoming a witness. And then 33, I was fired from my job after never having any sort of performance issue by the same people under criminal investigation for election fraud. So, you know, I filed a lawsuit, and, you know, that has taken 2 years to finally get any sort of ruling on. And recently, a couple months back, the judge, Biden-appointed judge, granted summary judgment on my case that administering an election is part of the fire chief's duties. So I was not protected under the First Amendment because she said that was a job duty of a fire chief, was to run an election, which I wasn't even a part of. So, I appealed that, and now I'm at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Wow, that's crazy. You had no idea that you were in charge of the election, huh?
No, it's actually, I just submitted this last week, my appellate brief. But what I outlined for the appellate court is, by Colorado statute, which is the law of the land there, it is a board oversight administration. That is the governance and responsibility of the board, not the fire chief. And they actually hired 2 employees, which is called a designated election officer and a deputy designated election officer, to administer that. And so, it would stand to reason that my job was to run emergency services and respond to calls, lead firemen, not run an election that I wasn't even present at.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So can you detail your moral crossroads in the wake of this discovery?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a fireman, a public servant. My job is not to be a part of criminal investigations, but I'm also a father with full custody to teenage daughters. And so I have some pages. I've got a Facebook page and a TikTok page where I'm making the videos, kind of going through each step of everything. And you can find that at Justice for Holt on either page. But
Okay.
in my early videos, I talked about this dilemma and this moral crossroads. My best interest and that of my daughters was to stay quiet. And, I have a new board coming in, whether they cheated the election or not. If I make waves, my best interest is definitely not in, getting them put under criminal investigation by turning over evidence. So, I definitely had a crossroads there, but I went with, my moral compass and the fact that as a veteran, I swore an oath to the Constitution. And so I did that as a citizen, not as a fire chief or as a fireman or any other role in my life. I did that as a citizen because I believe in what this country is. I believe in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. So I had to chew on that, and I did for a couple days to try to map out, when inevitably things went bad, what was I going to do to raise my daughters and provide for them? And that was a tough battle for sure.
So you had two choices. One choice was just to take the easy road and the low profile response, which would be to do nothing, right? And the other response was to stand up for your beliefs and do the right thing, which was to turn that information into the district attorney's office and let them go with it, right? And I guess you had video evidence or video footage showing the malfeasance?
Yeah, I did. So it was 4 cameras captured 12 hours of the election, so 48 hours roughly. But they're high-def 4K cameras so one was in the fire station interior where you could actually see over the poll watcher's table. One was outside covering the parking lot, and one was at the other building but you could capture the entire scheme of what took place. And it was quite, when I initially started watching it, I didn't know what I was looking for. So that's something I want people to understand. And I've talked about in my Justice for Hope pages is I just sat down with, is there something here? And I watched it. And I reviewed the rules, the Colorado statute on what the rules were. And so I knew kind of what was allowed and what wasn't. I've never been part of an election like that before. So my experience was going to the polls, casting my ballot and leaving. So
right.
I watched, and the more I watched, the more that I started to see things. And then I would go from camera 1 to camera 2 outside and kind of follow the action, so to speak. And by the time I had finished watching it, it was no question that an election was cheated live on camera.
Wow. That's crazy. And I guess those people didn't know they were on camera?
I don't think they knew or paid attention. I mean, it was well known that we had installed a security system for the fire station. It was posted on the door. And the same individuals had talked about it on social media and stuff, but maybe they didn't know where they were, or they assumed that the camera system was off that day. I don't really know what was in their mind.
So how did whistleblower retaliation impact your personal life?
Yeah, I lost everything. So 33 days after I met with the district attorney investigator and said, hey, I got this for you to see, that I went, like I said, off duty. I paid for the thumb drive out of my own pocket. I did everything outside of the scope of my work. And the second that it became known, so the outgoing board, the ones that technically lost the election, were aware, and that board president had filed a court injunction because they had been contacted by the district attorney also. And so in doing that, they moved what would be the regular election when the transition would happen from, I think it was supposed to be May 24th until June 12th. But they had to state publicly why they were doing that. And it said due to an open criminal investigation of election fraud or something along those lines. And as soon as that happened, my life turned upside down. I mean, harassment, all sorts of stuff. Culminating on day 33, I'm fired. And so many other things. How they fired me was, you can't just come out and say, we're firing you for being a witness. That's clearly illegal to do that. So what transpired was, May 24th, they just declared themselves, we're seated and we're in power. And they were posting about it and all this stuff. And so I actually wrote a memorandum to our attorney that's come up, and I've showed that on my videos, asking the attorney for guidance. Who is the board of directors? Who's in charge? Well, in that transition period, one of the people under criminal investigation went to the bank and froze all bank accounts of the district. What's important about that is this person was not an authorized signatory. And so the bank made this deal with him at the local level, and then like a couple days later realized, oh no, this is bank fraud. This guy's not an account signer. He's not authorized to have any interaction with it. And they froze the bank accounts. And when they did that, bills went unpaid. And ultimately they fired me because bills didn't get paid.
Wow. Local politics at its best, right? There's so much corruption at the local, county, state, and federal levels. It's just every day you turn on the TV, there's some story about corruption. You know, local politics is not immune to that.
It's dangerous. If these folks could get away with it, then who's safe in public service?
Right. So what challenges do you face in your ongoing legal battle?
Well, I think the judicial right now at a national level is, pretty highly politicized. And I think that is tough to go through. I have felt restraint and conflict this entire last couple of years. I mean, from the district attorney's office, basically stating like there was evidence of election fraud, but they weren't going to prosecute anything, and sort of dropping the ball on me there after I risked everything in trusting them, to the state attorney general in Colorado, not stepping in, not doing anything, to the federal court in Denver. It's a very broad thing to say that a fire chief's job was to administer and supervise an election when it's against state statute and when it's against the board hiring other employees to do that. And now I've got to fight to basically uphold case law that goes back 100 years in this country of what the First Amendment does, and even farther, obviously, it goes back to the Constitution being drafted. But the case law over, I'd say, the last 40 years since the 60s is pretty firm. And it protects speech, and plenty of case law that says, if it's of great public concern, you do that as a citizen, because our first duty is as citizens to uphold the Constitution. But I've had a judge now tell me that I'm not protected under the First Amendment in a country that I fought for, that I went to war for. It's not an easy pill to swallow. And so when that ruling came down, I was pretty crushed by it. I really felt a sense of loss for what I believed in our system. But through the help of my friends and colleagues, there's a greater cause here. It's not a personal victory. It is literally protecting all public servants across the country. We're all aware of corruption. We're all aware of what goes on at local, state, federal levels. And the only people that can stop those things from happening are public servants in positions with high moral content, I would say.
All right, so let me get this straight. You went to the district attorney's office with video footage showing evidence that there was election fraud, and they just chose to sweep it under the rug?
Yeah, time exposes quite a few things, and so apparently the Daily Wire actually just published an article recently that the mayor race in Colorado Springs, which is where the district attorney's office was, had some election malfeasance happen, and there was orders basically to quell any talk of election stuff. So I just recently saw that. Since I started speaking out and telling my story, people are sending me stuff now. And so there's some dots connected. The deputy DA that made that decision, that there was evidence of it, they could see it, but they weren't going to prosecute it, got himself arrested. So, that's all over the news. His name's Andy Vaughn out of Colorado Springs, if anybody wants to look it up. And so these are the people that I trusted in to uphold the law, and they dropped the ball. It's all politicized, unfortunately. I have found out, you can have the right moral compass that a lot of people believe in. And I think every patriot out there firmly believes in the system that has been set up and belief in the Constitution. But unfortunately, along that path are people that are in positions that won't do their jobs. And that's unfortunate for all of us.
That's crazy. I can't believe that. I mean, I can believe it, but I'm sorry that you've been affected in this way. I mean, the fact that you're doing social media, doing podcast interviews, and like you said, you have a Facebook and a YouTube channel, that you are exposing all of this stuff on, right? So
yeah.
So is that putting you in at risk?
I don't know. I really don't. Through this whole thing, I lost everything. I lost my home. I lost my job. I had to rebuild. It took quite a bit to do that. I spent every bit of life savings I had to make us stand in the courts and provide for my daughters while I wasn't working.
Right.
but I'm in a good place in life, and there's a greater cause than all of us, and that's what I'm after. I mean, I'm going through. I mean, I've shown the video evidence where people can see how the election was cheated. I'm going through everything and showing all the documents and the evidence. So in my video series, it's all long form video, so it is really hard to kind of capture people's attention spans and get them to tune in. But for the people that are, they're blown away by it. And I just now got to where I was fired. And so now I'm going to get into the district attorney, and I'm going to start showing, I have all the documents. So, I have documents with the DA's signature on it that says oh, there's clear evidence of election fraud here. And then I have, a month later, yeah, we're not recommending this for prosecution. And so I have nothing to hide. My conscience is clear.
Right.
What are they going to take from me? You know what I mean? So I got 2 daughters to show how to be a good citizen in this country that are watching every move I make, and that's really who I'm responsible to at the end of the day.
Right. I agree. So how do you view public servants' role in safeguarding democracy?
Yeah, that's an ever-changing thing. I mean, 2 years ago, I didn't think public servants really had a role in protecting the Bill of Rights, right? Until I was placed into this position, not of any will of my own. Believe me, I wouldn't have chose this path, but I could have given up at any point. I could have counted the pennies I was throwing out for lawyers and for court fees and all this stuff. None of that amounts to much for me. It's at the end of the day, there are millions of first responders that I've now been placed into a position to protect. Whether they know me or not, there's greater ramifications that is for me to fight. And I think that's how we continue to protect what we're founded on in this country.
Right. Well, I appreciate you doing that. I know it's come at a great personal cost to you.
Yeah, it definitely has. It definitely has. But I would do it again like that. I think I mentioned my daughters, what they've seen and what they've learned throughout this process is going to make 2 more really good citizens of this country when they become adults. And I really think that's what we need to focus on as parents.
Are there any national organizations that could help you? I'm sitting here trying to think of, there's what is that organization that's always getting involved in civil rights issues? I can't think of it right off the top of my head.
Yes, there is. Yeah, I can't.
ACLU?
ACLU or something like that. Yeah. Yes, there is. So you got to get on their radars, though. And so with my case, I have found that since I appealed to the 10th Circuit and I am on social media now, that I am getting, I'm here on your podcast and I have followers on social media. And so, yeah, I'm trying to get to where I can get some support. I think, now we're at the point where if the ruling is confirmed, now we take a step back and it exposes risk to public servants that witness crimes. So that goes to law enforcement. That goes to fire and EMS, And so that's why I decided, initially when that ruling came out, I just said, all right, the journey's over. I lost. But I had so many people call me and say, man, you can't. It's bigger than you. And so the more I share, the more, I hope that your followers will. I also have a GoFundMe. I'm trying to generate, none of that money is going to come to me. It's going to go to the legal defense and the appeals process. Sometimes, in Lane v. Franks, that's the most sort of recent big First Amendment case law. They had to go to the Supreme Court, and that's a decade-long battle, and that takes resources. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get support. I'm trying to share the story. I'm trying to show people this isn't one Yahoo that's a conspiracy theorist. I'm fighting against their algorithms on social media because any sort of conversation like this gets gated down. If people can share my story, you can go on my page, like, comment, share. I know that sounds cliche, but that's how these grassroots things work in modern society now. And that's how I get the attention of the big players.
So I'm going to share your Facebook page. I just found it.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so here we go. So Justice for Holt. If people wanted to, I'm just going to follow that, so I'll be following it. So it's Facebook.com, Justice for Holt, all one word. You can follow the page, and you can read all the, there's a video. Is that you? That's funny.
I did.
You're damn right I did.
I made a little,
I would America. Again. That's funny.
Yeah, so I'm doing long-form content, but there is a lot of me, trying to make little funny clips that, are 15 seconds to catch people's attention, and they go, hey, who is this guy? But this is me. I mean, this is if you go through, if you scroll down towards the bottom of them, like there is the video where I'm showing the election day footage and screenshots of it and explaining what I found and what I saw. So it's just, I wanted to do it in that way, even though it's hard to capture people's attention, so that I'm not hiding anything. Like, this is the actual documentation of the case. This is the actual video. This is everything that took place.
That is crazy. Well, the more eyes you get on this situation, the better. So I don't have a huge following, but I will be. I actually upload all my magic clips, or the small. Well, Riverside calls them magic clips. They're short videos. I upload those to several Second Amendment gun rights Facebook groups. There's like 12,000 people. How many of those 12,000 people are actually going to pay attention to? I have no control over that, right? But I will certainly do my part to get the word out and hopefully get more exposure to this.
I appreciate it. It's a slow crawl. I mean, it takes months and months and months to get content up where it's being fed to people, and whatever it takes, I'm going to do. I believe in this country. I believe in our Constitution.
So where do you have the GoFundMe account listed?
It's Justice for Holt as well on GoFundMe. On that page, There's a link to it. It's not generating much. And again, my focus isn't necessarily the GoFundMe. I have expended $150,000 to my attorneys to get it to the district court level. And now I'm in the 10th Circuit pro se because I can't. They wanted $50,000 up front to take it to the appeals court. So I sold my house in Colorado to pay that initial amount, and I gave up everything that I'd worked for in life to fund that. But, if people see the cause and they want to donate, I appreciate it, absolutely. But one way or the other, I'm going to continue this.
Well, God bless you. So, Erik, I appreciate you being on the podcast episode today. It's hard to believe that American servicemen, first responders, that you're a first responder and that you're having to experience this. I can't even imagine what it would feel like, or to be in your shoes, really. But anyway, thank you for being here.
I was going to say, at some point it becomes an honor to defend the country. And I did that as a service member, and I'll continue to do that as a citizen.
All right. So thank you for being here. We'll certainly get this out to all our social media platforms and help you spread the word as much as we can. So to the listening audience, I want to say thank you for the privilege of your time. You can contact us at Liberty Gun Rights Podcast at proton.me. That's Liberty Gun Rights Podcast at proton.me. And David, thank you, Erik, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.